This podcast is recorded, edited, and produced by myself. All expenses from the gear, time, and travel are also covered by myself. To support this podcast in growing, reaching new people, new heights, and a higher quality, support this podcast at a link in the description. Thank you, and enjoy your episode. I'm Matt Williams. I partied my way through high school. I joined the army straight out of school as a rifleman. I deployed to Afghanistan for 8.5 months as a crew commander at 20 and turned 21 over there. I've travelled the world twice, jumped from planes, dove under the sea, drank from shoes in over 20 countries, and I regret nothing. Returning home in a regular doctor's checkup, I was diagnosed with an incurable, inoperable brain tumour on my 22nd birthday. Since then, I've made it my mission to enjoy my life as much as I can and show that terminal illness doesn't mean your life can't be successful, meaningful, and fucking awesome, whilst putting in as much effort as I can to raising money for brain cancer research. 12 months of chemo done, 60,000 plus donated to research, and I'm fucking happier than ever and redefining terminal illness and smiling through it all. And then we'll jump in from there. So welcome back to the Willy show as usual. I've been on a hiatus for probably a couple of months now. I've been a little bit flat out, but we're back with a couple of episodes. I'm actually sitting here with one of my mates, Mark Direen, an ex-Special Forces bloke, mate that came into my life actually from the Simpson Desert. And then he's going to sort of chat about his life and experiences he's had, which, well, from my perspective, are bloody incredible. So that's the show coming up, and strap in for the next hour or so. Testing.
It's the Willy Show.
Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're in the new Point Assist warehouse, Mark, in the most exclusive bar in the whole of Hobart at the moment.
Yep, don't tell anyone about it.
Don't tell anyone about it. Third person in here, and well, today sitting here with a couple of waters because you had a couple of beers last night after the new launch of.
We did have a bit of an explore on the waterfront in Hobart last night.
A little bit. My first time down in Hobart, so it's been a bit of a bloody experience. It's bloody good though. So we're smashing out this in the morning before we get in. Well, get onto a flight and home back to Adelaide. So really, I want to take it back to the sort of beginning of you at high school, I guess, and your experiences, because I know you joined the army very early at 17, and like sort of the few years prior to that, and what you were like at school or growing up.
Yeah, I grew up here in Hobart, so didn't really leave the city or the state at all. I did leave the city. I didn't really leave the state at all, and until I joined the army. I think I went to Melbourne once for the weekend, taking a game of footy. Yeah, keen follower of the football when I was younger, and yeah, joined the military and went away to Kapooka to basic training.
Oh, bloody Pookie, is that?
Good fun, wasn't
it? Oh, mate, it's the worst. At least in my opinion, the worst part of your career by far.
Yeah.
So before that, what were you working before leaving school?
Oh, no, I was going to college here, but I suppose I was deciding at the time, and the wise wisdom of a 17-year-old does, 16, 17, that school wasn't really for me. So skipping school on the odd day to go and work probably wasn't too uncommon. I did a few days as a labourer here and there when I was young. Used to work at Coles a bit as well, so zipping into the supermarket to stack shelves.
Yeah,
it was all good.
And do you have military history running the family?
Not a lot. I had some uncles on my father's side serve in the some great uncles serve in the First World War, and my grandfather, my mother's father, served in the Second World War, and I've got an uncle, his son, that went to Vietnam, but not heaps and heaps of military heritage or anything like that. No.
Yeah, did that influence your decision at all to join, or your family's influence?
Not really. I don't think my family had much influence at all, and I don't know really what got me interested in the military a lot as a kid. I did army cadets for a while. Just as a young fella, did a little while in scouts, and when I was really young, and then I did a bit of junior fire brigade sort of stuff in Hobart. Did that for a little while.
Yeah,
just bounced around trying different things, and then cadets sort of stuck a bit to think to myself, I might join the Army Reserve. And then as a kid interested in the military, read a few military books and bits and pieces, but I actually don't think I really thought I was ever join the full-time army, like right through year 10, 11, and even I sort of started year 12. I was trying to get an apprenticeship in Hobart. I was going to be a motor mechanic or a welder or a fitter and turner, something like that. Like I expected that I would go into the workforce like most people did, I suppose.
It's a weird one because I have no family history in military as well. And I think my parents thought I was almost taking the piss growing up, saying, "I am to join the army." Oh, yeah, righto. You grow out of that phase.
Yeah.
Next thing, in the infantry, like, what the fuck? What's Matt doing?
Yeah. I enjoyed the leaving home part. Like I enjoyed, because I lived at home till I joined the army, and then off I went, off to the mainland, as we say down in Tassie. And it's a big experience. Yeah, I loved it.
The big island.
Off to the big island.
Yeah, fucking oath. So then joining, Kapooka, so you joined the infantry.
Yep.
Do you have any sort of experiences you want to share from your Kapooka Singo days?
Oh, even
Best
probably
time in
before that, I think a funny little story for me was because I'd spent all this time sort of at the end of school trying to get an apprenticeship. When I then initially thought I might join the army, I was going to go and join the army and get an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So I went into recruiting and did all their aptitude testing and everything like that. And eventually the recruiting officer says to me, come in for a meeting. Congratulations, you've been accepted to apprentice school, which was, I suppose, what I was aiming for at the time. But little did he realise that after a few visits to the recruiting office and watching all the videos of the different jobs, I wasn't any longer so keen on what the motor mechanic was doing, fixing the car. I was more interested in the dude running around the bush with a gun, shooting at stuff. So I literally, in that office, getting told, congratulations, you've been accepted, you're going next week. I've changed my mind. And I actually, even as a civvy, remember getting shouted at and kicked out of his office.
Well, at least they're preparing you for it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, gee, that was a bit rude.
No, mate, the way I always say that with the infantry compared to everyone else is like, kids never play with toy soldier pokes. you never like, oh, this army man's driving a truck around and doing this.
This army man's changing the gearbox in a Land Rover. No,
I've got a gun.
He's throwing hand grenades around and blowing stuff up.
They're all infantry.
Yeah.
If you're running around the garden with your little fake gun, you're playing a grunt.
No, but it was all good. I sort of then, at the time, that was like 92, the army was taking a lot of ready reserve guys at the time, which was a scheme where you did 12 months full-time service and then transition back to the Army Reserve.
Because it was a slow time for defence,
I
guess, at the time.
I suppose. It was coming to the end of that era where Australia as a country had a big commitment to Vietnam, and then through the 80s, not done too much. I think when this was happening, when I was like looking at joining, the battalion that I ended up going to, one I hadn't even deployed to Somalia yet, so it was like right back before too much was going on, so I just sort of changed my mind, but I didn't want to do the ready reserve scheme. I had decided I wanted to join the full-time military and do 4 years. So they said, well, you need to come back in 6 months. So that's when I joined the Army Reserve for 6 months, or 8 months or something like that, before I joined the regular army. Yeah,
good shit. So you ended up at one area, Townsville.
Yep.
And that's about as far from bloody Hobart as you can get.
Yep.
Was that at least I got a little bit of choice at the end of Singo, but did you elect to go there or were you just pushed there?
So, again, getting worked over by Army recruiting as they try to do to everyone. I went to Kapooka, and then once I got there, realised that I wasn't going to infantry. I'd been Corps enlisted to artillery.
Oh, really?
So that was also interesting. I'm like, oh no, the dude at recruiting told me I could be an infantry soldier. And my section commander or whatever at Kapooka said, yeah, well, we don't care what he told you. You're going to Manly. The artillery school was at Manly at the time. You're going to Manly, do your OT school, and then you're going to be standing on a gun line. And so myself and about 4 or 5 other guys kind of battled for ages, telling them that we didn't want to go to artillery, that we wanted to go to infantry, and they actually eventually changed it for us. Yeah, cool. So then once we were going to infantry, I really wasn't, while I had an interest in the military, it was more along the lines of, reading a novel from Vietnam or something. I actually didn't know heaps about the Australian Army and how a lot of stuff works, so I was just happy to go to whichever battalion they were sending me. When I was at Singo, the blokes, the bits 1RA had just come back from Somalia.
Yep.
So I was still doing my basic training, and we had a corporal there who was a Somalia veteran. And so then a few guys in the platoon I was in sort of went, well, that sounds pretty cool. We wouldn't mind going to 1RA. So I think most of the blokes went to Townsville 1 and 2, and a few guys that wanted to be paratroopers went to 3RA.
Yeah. And once you got to Townsville, you ended up doing the reconnaissance, basic reconnaissance course.
Yeah, as you know, like Kapuka and Singo, you're stuck in the base doing training most of the time.
Yeah, getting smashed.
I was still this young fella that had grown up in sheltered old Tasmania at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got to Townsville that was the big eye-opener that bloody, there's a fair bit going on in the world that I didn't know about type thing. So it was a bit all new to me.
Yeah.
Just turning 18 at the time and go to the pubs and get on the beers and basically get yourself in as much trouble as you liked.
Yeah, fucking oath. And I think that's almost an important learning curve for young diggers.
Yeah.
I'm going to get myself with some strife.
No, I was late one day, late home or late to work the next morning, big night on the piss one night, and a few extras from the platoon sergeant and bits and pieces, and so I was learning about how the world really worked.
That's the most digger story ever. And did you deploy with 1RA?
No, I didn't. I did an exercise to Hawaii.
Yep.
While I was there, which was awesome. I did when I was in 1RA, I did a couple of years in the rifle company. I was in Charlie Company in 8 platoon. Did a few years there. Then I did a year in reconnaissance platoon, and then a year in the sniper section in the battalion. When I was in reconnaissance platoon, we did a exercise to Hawaii, which was a great trip. Had a great team, good guys, good section, a good patrol commander.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fucking oath. And it's already quite a successful career in the infantry. Like, even if you left it there, it's pretty.
Oh yeah, and
I
had no big long-term plans or goals or what I was going to do in the army. I just, when I joined, decided I wanted to be an infantryman.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me, and which is like a subject that's keep recurring to me in life, I suppose. I didn't want to grow old and think to myself, I always wanted to do that, and then I never did it. So it was kind of what I thought at the time. Well, I'll just go and do this for 4 years and get a job after that. Basically, that's what I thought to myself. Yeah.
And I think, especially for infantry, it is a young man's job.
Absolutely.
Like,
it's
you're better off doing it young than doing it old.
Yeah.
I actually had a guy at Kapuka Singo with me. Yeah, you've cut your face there, somewhere. You got a bit of blood on you. That's how hardcore this podcast gets. Meanwhile, I drink. We had a guy at Kapuka Singo with me who had just finished like 7 years of med school, who was a GP.
Yeah, right.
And he went, I'm about to have a 30-year career. He was, say, 25.
Yep.
I'm about to have a 30-year career sitting in an office talking to someone about having a cold cough or a bloody sore. I'm going to spend 4 years in the infantry before it.
Yeah.
And that sort of resonated with me at the time. Oh, yeah, that's probably a good thing to do young before you step into...
Oh, and I'm a big fan of it as well. It's a life experience.
Yeah.
Like, the more variety you can get in your life experiences, the better. The more well-rounded you'll be, the more knowledgeable you'll be as a human, I suppose. So.
Fucking oath. And I think, at least for me as a young man, it's a massive learning curve. Going from year 12, fucking around to doing what I want. Next thing, someone's telling me how I need to fold my socks in my cupboard and where they need to be. Fucking what? Yeah. Fuck off.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah,
I thought, oh yeah, this is basic training's going to be hard.
Yeah.
They got to teach me to be a soldier. I didn't know I'd have to do all that ironing and marching.
Yeah, all the fuck around bullshit.
To me, I didn't find. I suppose Kapuka was difficult at the time. In hindsight, I look back and I don't think it was very hard.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it. I just got it done. But I enjoyed Singleton, because you went from marching and ironing and learning, the rules to being taught how to be a soldier.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Singleton.
Yeah,
and I found it more challenging,
Yeah, I remember someone said to me when I first got... so Mark was the 1st battalion, I'm the 7th battalion, currently still. Someone said to me as soon as I marched out of Singo into the unit, Singo was the best time of your career that you'd never want to do again. And it's true. Yeah. It resonated with me a bit because a battalion, you still do good training, but it's not, Singo, you'll have urban week and then you'll back by high explosive week and then, self-defense or whatever, like ICCC, like hand-to-hand stuff.
Yep.
And that tempo of training. And probably the one thing I missed about Singo was it was so the boys.
Yep.
Like people don't have external families and lives there.
Absolutely.
You're in Singleton in New South Wales, and it comes Friday and everyone goes out to the pubs in Newcastle because that's all.
You're not asking
all
your
to
mates, do they want to come for a beer tonight? You're asking your mates, where are we going for a beer tonight?
Yeah.
And you're all together all the time. Yeah, which is, you look back on that and there's a lot of similarities between that and then a deployment.
Very.
Which is why, and you're learning a lot as well, whether people admit it or not. They enjoy learning, absorbing new information.
So, fucking oath. Especially shit that is challenging, bit scary at some points. The first time, like, I don't care what anyone says, the first time you pick up an F1 grenade or, the first time you handle an 84, you're like the first, like, after a while, it's just, just something else with a yellow ring around it.
Yep.
But the first time you're doing it, you're like, what do you mean this has a 30-meter kill radius and I'm loading it in?
Yeah, you're holding something in your hand that can kill you.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. So,
fucking oath.
Yeah, it's that whole fear factor as well. Like you've got to overcome that bit of fear to function properly. Heaps of skills in that little thing. I talk to people about some of that stuff all the time. Like an example of an action like that, that hand grenade, being able to do that has so much lessons in it that actually apply. Obviously, throwing hand grenades around society is not useful, but there's so many lessons in that thing that actually apply to everyday life. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's one of those, it's a weird thing because you just overthink it in your head. Let's say the grenade. If you gave someone a tennis ball and said, throw it over this wall, they'd never fuck
No
up.
dramas.
No, never.
Yep.
But as soon as that happens, and I think overcoming those as a young man particularly, it's a pretty big thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You hear psychologists particularly say guys like Jordan Peterson talk about, exposing yourself to like low, mid stress, things like that's really good for your brain.
Yep.
And really good for you sort of growing up.
Yep.
Because I know I had a problem, not sure if you were similar, coming out of mainly sort of Singleton and a bit of time in the unit. And when I got back to home, it's almost struggling a bit with my maturity compared to my peers back at home because I'd gone away and in 9 months I'd done all this shit and they were on gap years, working the same jobs, dating the same girls.
Yep.
Did you find that if you came back a bit?
A little bit. I'd get my leave. I sort of didn't reconnect with I really didn't reconnect with many people at all I went to school with or anything like that. Like went to Townsville, would get a couple of weeks leave. I'd come back and spend a bit of time with my family, go fishing again with my father or whatever while I was on leave, and then I'd be back to work. I really, all my good friends then came out of the military, I think. So even a few leave periods I remember a few 6-week leave periods. I went to Adelaide with a good mate. I went somewhere else and I was meeting my new friends, families where they lived, more so than coming back to Tassie. So I stayed immersed, I suppose, in that new military family that I had.
Yeah, I think I ended up staying immersed in it. Like currently now I haven't been back home in 2 years because I don't really, like my parents come and visit me here, my family, and I'm like, well, it's not much for me. Not much for me back there.
I spend heaps of time back in Tassie now, and I've reconnected with a couple of friends that I had at school, and great guys,
Oh, yeah.
But they're not going to replace those mates, really, that you made in the military.
Oh, fucking no, that is true. Your best mates, or your closest mates at least.
Mine
the
are,
shit you go through with.
Yep.
So sort of moving forward a bit, your time sort of in your reconnaissance sniper, platoon shit at 1RAO, then moving on to wanting to go through your special forces selection and through that sort of stream. Where did the passion come for that?
Yeah, for me, it's a real interesting sort of subject because looking back now, I honestly don't believe I had this mad passion, desire or goal to be in the special forces. It just seemed like I was a scout in a rifle company and I enjoyed that. So then that's what made me want to apply to do the recon course and do that. And going through that recon sniper sort of system in the battalion in the mid-90s was kind of a lot of people that did that just did selection at some stage. They wanted to give it a go. So for me, it was just kind of, well, this is what everyone else is doing. Yeah, I'll give that a go as well. And I really just went, it's probably, in hindsight, it's the wrong approach to a selection course like that. But my approach was, I'll just give this a go and see what it's about. I don't really know. And for them to do the selection course, which is around 3 weeks or so, I'm just a pretty stubborn guy. So once I got there, I didn't want them to be the people that told me when it was time to go home. So I did my best to pass all the testing they had and get to, and be there at the end of the day, I suppose.
Yeah, because we talked about that last night about, failing something on selection and righto, Mr. Direen or candidate, whatever, you failed this, you want to go home. No, mate, I'm here for 21 days.
Yeah. I love my own freedoms. I don't really like to be dictated to by, I like to be in control, I suppose, of my environment, my surroundings to as much as I can, as much as you can be. And I didn't like those blokes telling me that it was time for me to go home. And I said, no, I've come here to do this. In my head, I've come here to do this thing and I'll stay till the end.
Yeah.
I really didn't know whether I was going to pass, or no one does. And I didn't have this mad drive or focus and in my head, positive talk and all these things. I just rocked up to do it and did it.
Yeah.
And stayed.
And stand at the end, which is a bloody marvel for anyone, to be honest, or a massive feat. So you got, when was the year you actually got in
97.
USF?
Yeah.
97. And when did you deploy in the next couple of years after that?
No, the Olympic Games were coming up.
Yep.
And I did so we finished the selection course in 97, so right through 98, bit over 12 months at the time for us. I think we did all our training courses that we need to do.
Yeah.
Unarmed fighting and demolitions and patrolling and roping skills. And I was a vehicle mounted guy. So I did some vehicle mounted stuff. And because I was a sniper in the battalion, I got channeled into sort of the SF sniper stuff as well. So I did another sniper course. And by the time I got to my operational squadron, it was coming into 99. Yep. And they needed some new reinforcements to go to the squadron that was going to the Olympic Games. So me and a couple of other blokes went to the squadron that was going to the Olympic Games, yeah.
That's 2000 Sydney Olympics.
That's right.
Was that right? Yeah. That might sound like a dumb question to anyone older than me, but I'm 4 years old at the time. I got fucking no idea. I'm a 96 baby. You're in the army bloody longer than I was born.
And when the Olympics was coming up in, when I suppose the powers to be, the hierarchy, and that were planning it back in the time, there wasn't anything else going on. That was the thing it was the cool job to get on. So blokes were striving to get into the squadron that was going to Olympic Games. Little did they know, before we even got to Sydney for the actual games, Timor was going to kick off and lots of other things were going to change.
And within 12 months after that, we're going to have planes flying into towers that really then started the war on terror.
Yep.
That ended up being Australia is still actively involved, although not in the war on terror anymore. We're still involved in Afghanistan and Iraq heavily.
Yep.
Still active with guys there. Well, I was there only bloody 2 years ago.
Yep.
So at that point, Timor started kicking off.
Yep, we did. I did heaps. The commitment to Sydney, I think for us, was a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So we did heaps and heaps of exercises around Sydney the year before to get familiar, I suppose, with the terrain and everything like that. And then we stayed in Sydney for the actual games. And then post-Sydney, we were now into 2001. Lots of other guys had already rotated through to operations in Timor. And so it was time for the squadron I was in to help out and catch up, I suppose. And we started to get trips to Timor to do jobs there, yeah.
And for you, and I'm not sure how much you want to go over the army deployments and everything, but for you was being in an elite unit like that, when you saw the planes hit the buildings, was it a bit of a, fuck lads, we're going to be involved in this?
Oh, no, not really. I was in Timor at the time, and I'd just finished, it was 2001, I'd just finished my 6-month deployment there, so I end of my deployment to Timor coincided with their elections, their first elections. They finished doing all that stuff. I was actually packing my bags at our little base we had at Ballabo to come back to Australia. It was the end of my 6-month deployment, and someone came running in and said, some mad shit going on in America. come and check it out. And I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty tired. I'm going to go to bed. Like, we didn't realise, I suppose, the gravity of the situation. I finished packing my bags and went to bed and got up the next morning to head back to Dili and fly home. And obviously it was massive on the news, and then continued to change the course of my career and everyone else's.
Yeah, fucking oath. I always put it that at least the war on terror brought a lot of guys HSV V8s at some point.
A few swimming pools got put in there.
Swimming pool. That's one good thing to come out of it. So then you deployed into Afghanistan.
No, because I'd just returned from Timor.
Yeah. Well, the next couple
we had
of
to take a bit of
years.
leave, yeah. So I wasn't in the first crew that went over. Australia's first commitment was 2001.
Yep.
Was literally as I was getting off the plane back home, my mates were getting on the plane to go back to Afghanistan. And so they did a couple of 4-month rotations, different blokes, and I was on the third one of those. So 2002, mid-2002, I think we went over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was that? Boots on the ground
Oh,
amongst that?
enjoyed it. You're again with a team of awesome dudes. You're doing the job that you train for. It was an important job at the time. You're liberating oppressed people.
Yeah.
Like, that's the shit. That's a really good thing to do.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed that part of it, and I was really lucky. Luck's probably not a good word for it. I was fortunate as well in my career, and including that first trip to Afghanistan, where lots of guys that joined the army, say 2009, 2011, 12, 13 type thing. Some of those guys got dumped into really difficult combat situations, like week one, day one type thing. Whereas for me, I had this really structured career where I got to get really good at my basic skills when I was an infantry soldier in 1RR, and then I slowly progressed into operations that got more and more difficult over time, if that makes sense. So it was like just, good fortune the way it panned out.
Yeah.
My career just sort of kept on the up and up with difficulty level of jobs, starting in the C grade and making my way up to the pros as I went slowly, instead of getting
not just dumped in the deep end.
Not just dumped in. I wasn't dumped in the deep end, which was good. So 2002 was a great job. And the tours I did of Afghanistan, it was there was enough gap between each one that the whole operation evolved over the 10 years or whatever it was. So the first one was massively different to the middle ones and the last trip I did.
Yeah. So I'm not going to sort of poke you too much, get information on it, because I know how it is, particularly with you have all your security stuff and then just privacy of other guys and everything as well. But is there anything about those trips, like stories or anything you want to share? Because I've heard you talk one-on-one with myself, not broadcasted.
When I was growing up, I rode
fantastic
dirt bikes, and I loved four-wheel driving and camping. My father used to take me camping, and we'd go four-wheel driving and motorbike riding. I loved that that's stuff, basically. Yeah. So that led me down the path to want to be a mobility operator when I got to the regiment. And so that first trip to Afghanistan for 4 months was mobility operations. I think the 4 months I was there, we did about 3 or 4 patrols. So I think we did one patrol, was nearly 70 days. It was like 68 days or something like that. That was a long time. But we were out driving around the countryside in our cars. You were fully immersed in the Afghan culture as a small group of guys, literally with two or four cars type thing, roaming the countryside, meeting and talking to the locals. They were mostly, I think, happy to see us because they thought that they were going to have a much brighter future, that they were ousting the Taliban from the joint. So, and we were, camping out of our cars, getting resups every couple of weeks. We'd get a Chinook would come in and dump us off some more fuel and food. It wasn't like heaps and heaps of gunfighting or anything that first trip. So We didn't need the ammo resups. We were just a lot more just long-range reconnaissance, doing reporting, sending it back up through the coalition system so they could glean the intelligence out of it. And, we were roaming the countryside, having a good time.
Yeah, I know the Aussies still hold the longest patrol in Afghan.
Yeah,
Still got that record amongst everyone, and that probably it. 70 days, bloody long time.
Yeah, that trip, I think we did a really long patrol at the start. In the middle, we did a couple of foot patrols, a couple of recon patrol sort of things, sitting on mountains, watching valleys, pathfinding for some other American operations type thing. And then the second half of the trip, we did another big long patrol in a different area. I think the coalition, and especially the Americans, couldn't fathom that they had these troops, this call sign, that was so self-sufficient they could go out and deploy in the field for such a long period. It was foreign to them. I think they just saw it as this great asset. Get the Australians in there because they're good with the people. They'll tell us exactly what's going on in the area, and they send back phenomenal intelligence.
Did the coalition command, because that's sort of almost out of because it's so out of the ordinary, do they almost struggle commanding and giving the jobs because they'd never dealt with troops that could do a 70-day patrol? They just wouldn't plan it? You guys could take a week and actually do this?
Probably my answer there is I was a scout in a patrol. So that was probably way above me. I didn't see a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I honestly think at the time, a lot of our commanders, squadron commanders and bits and pieces, they were having to go to the coalition and say, hey, you've got this problem here. You've got this area that's got no one in it, or you don't know what's going on here. My guys can do that. So there was almost, I think, a bit of advertising what we were actually capable of. And then, I don't know, probably a bit of skepticism at the start from the coalition going, really? You're going to go out there for, 2 months? All right. To then they're surprised that, we could go out in the field for 2 months and be self-sustaining pretty much.
Yeah, well, it's quite a bloody feat. But I guess, you look at the terrain in Australia as a whole, it's important because Australia is such a big, vast country, but a challenging country with as long as resupply. If you're in the middle of Simpson, which you and me were a couple of weeks back, there's no bloody water. You have to be pretty self-sufficient, pretty switched on. And I guess that's why even down to our baseline troops all the way through into your special forces regiments are so good at that long range stuff because, Australia's the 6th biggest country in the world by land with 26 million people. It's pretty bloody vast. We will have to move weeks at a time to get.
And that was some of the capability that I was trained in. I had to master. I got trained by really capable guys. Was that driving across Australia, vast distances over long periods, in defence of our country, I suppose.
Yeah, because I guess that's first and foremost the job.
Yeah,
is we're a defence force.
Yep.
So moving on into the future tours, as standout almost events that have happened to you.
Yeah, we did a lot of that long range patrolling, so that was real standout at that first one and meeting lots of different people. The second one, the second trip that I did in 2007, as I said a while ago, there wasn't so much fighting in that first one. I knew that when I was going back for my second trip, so I'd had mates going sort of 2005, 2006, I knew that the fighting was going to be a lot more present, I suppose, on that on my second trip. And that's what happened. There was a lot more fighting. On a daily occurrence sometimes, and sometimes it was close up and sometimes it was long distance. Yeah. But there was a lot more enemy. There was a lot more ever present. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Afghanistan, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is there anything from that you want to share? Like I'm not to Drew. Just because some of the stories are bloody incredible, or at least maybe not the events, but maybe the impact that events have had on you.
Yeah.
That your change, have you changed as a person from,
Oh,
when we talk
absolutely.
about you getting into the army and then that growth of that
Yep.
20-year career, whatever it was, and then you coming out. And
Well, that
how
had
you
that
view
whole
the world.
trip had a big impact on me, as any experience in life will have an impact on anyone, but especially when guys are starting to see combat for the first time, I suppose, as I was, then yeah, it's going to have a huge impact. I got wounded, injured at the end of that trip.
Yeah.
I think, funnily enough, we're on our drive from northern Oruzgan back down to Tarankout, and I drove over an ID in my vehicle. So I got banged up pretty bad and evacuated out of the field and sent back to Australia. So that, like, injuries and things like that as well are going to have pretty long-lasting effects on you.
And how was that from the explosion leading through to waking up in a bloody hospital?
I was awake the whole
presuming
time.
Germany or something? Yeah.
No, I didn't go to Germany. So, yeah, big deal, big event. I was in command of the little force element that I was with. There was, half a dozen guys or so. And I directed and commanded us to go where we needed to go. And then driving over the ID, it's actually... when people talk about time slowing down, maybe in a car crash or some sort of life-threatening situation, that's one of the things I remember massively of that split second. We'd driven down a hill on a road, and we'd sort of parked at an area where we'd sort of been designated to stop. And then shortly after that, we saw a guy looking really suspect. And I turned to my driver and said to my mate, "Hey, let's go over and grab that guy." Like, he actually looked that sus and dodgy that at the time, through, my processing of all the information that I had present to me, I suppose, I actually thought about just shooting the guy. But I couldn't ID a weapon on him. Yeah. So I pretty much ruled that one out and said, let's go over and get that guy and we'll question him and see what the hell's going on. And we started the car up and drove forward 30 centimetres and crumper. The road just came up and passed me. Yeah. But that, like, time slowing down, I can actually remember the dust. Yeah. The wave of dust coming up, engulfing me. And then I can actually remember flying out of the dust. So going through the air, we had our patrol vehicles were big open cut vehicles. They had no roof on them. So pretty easily thrown out of the car. But I went a long way. I don't know how far I went, 15 metres or something from the vehicle, thrown down this creek line. I can remember flying through the air, and I can remember looking back at the actual vehicle, and it's there's a 7-ton car there, full of, fuel and ammunition and food, and it's a metre off the ground. So there was a fair bit of a bang in it. I think, earlier, just before that, the Australian Army, in their wisdom, had put some metal protection, they called it mine protection, underneath the vehicle, because pretty much after, I think, Andy Russell had been killed in 2001. So they'd put this mine protection on the vehicle, and that probably saved us a little bit. I think the vehicle that I was in, if anyone knows about sort of ID tactics and things like that, they started to progress in Afghanistan. Never really as sophisticated as Iraq, but they'd moved away from just having a landmine in the road, basically, to having remotely detonated sort of pressure plates and things like that. So our front wheel hit a remote pressure plate, most likely like saw blades, together, completing a circuit, and then the wire was running back to underneath the vehicle, which was behind. So designed to get the vehicle, but in our case probably saved us a bit, because the bulk of the bang literally went off underneath the gearbox. And so the gearbox, a pretty big chunk of metal, deflecting a lot of the shockwave, and probably saved us a bit.
And getting thrown out.
Yeah, and thrown out down the river.
And how did the rest of that look like once you
tumbled and
bloody thrown?
And I went to jump up.
Yeah,
this is not a good place to be. I'll get up, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't really feel my legs at the time. I didn't think I was in a lot of pain. I don't remember being scared or anything like that. I just, in my mind and through training and experience, I was expecting a complex ambush.
Yeah.
So they put bombs in the road to initiate it, and then they were going to open fire on us. So in my mind, I'm pretty much going, I need to get up, and then I couldn't get up. And then the next thing I thought to myself, well, I need to be able to defend myself here. I need my rifle. And I actually looked back at the car to see where my rifle was, and the car had sort of just come down to a bit of a bouncing halt. I remember seeing all the, hundreds and hundreds of litres diesel pouring out of it, running down the creek sort of towards me a bit. There's dust starting to settle, and I could see my rifle lying on the ground next to it. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to I tried to get up and I couldn't get up. I'm not going to be able to get my rifle. So I'll need my handgun, I'll need my pistol to defend myself. And I went to my holster and my pistol had gone. And I'm still lying there trying to bloody find something to defend myself with. And my pistol was on a lanyard. So I've grabbed the lanyard and started dragging it in, and my pistol's come out from under some rocks. And I was literally only sitting there, I think, for a few seconds. And by that stage, my guys behind me had started bounding forward to start rendering us first aid and stuff like that. Guys had been, by this stage, pushing out, taking charge, clearing the high ground around us and things like that. So from there, it was literally, how are we going to evacuate? Myself and the driver both needed to be evacuated back to the hospital, be checked out.
Yeah, one of the funny things, or two, and you went over the first one at the time, something. I remember you telling me, I could still remember like dust lifting me off from my cams, and passing me, and then I got thrown. But the second was in hospital after being blown up, pretty much your whole body bloated.
Yeah, like because of the massive shockwave. I was fortunate that I didn't sustain any like mad shrapnel injuries or not too many penetrating wounds. I had a few grazes and cuts and bits and pieces, but nothing that was life-threatening. But it was just that massive shockwave passing through your body. I was black. My whole body was black from bruising. My whole body was swelling, and we because I couldn't feel my legs at the time, they're putting me into all their medical machines to test me and try and work out what was wrong with me. Is he's broken X-rays and scans, broken backs or whatever. And at the end of a long and painful process of all this poking and prodding, the doctors have come out sort of 12, I don't know how long, after all that, 12 hours later or something. And the doc's pretty much gone, mate, you look pretty good to go. We just have to wait till the swelling goes down to see if you get feeling back in your legs. And that's what happened. A couple of days later, I'm sort of hobbling around again, and they just literally write it off to so much swelling through your body that crushed my spinal cord, for a day or so, and then, slowly coming good over bloody 10 years after that.
Yeah, pretty fucking scary time thinking, fuck, I might have lost bloody movement of my legs.
Yeah, and I was just more a bit, I suppose at the time, you're talking hours after the event, I was a bit angry at myself for getting caught out, I suppose, and different bits and pieces. Maybe I made the wrong decision. This is what I'm thinking at the time. Yeah. So you're sort of coming to terms with not winning the grand final, I suppose.
Yeah, but I guess it's, some of those decisions are in. Well, I remember when a warrant officer going to us, he's like, hindsight's the foresight of arseholes. Yeah. It's easy to look back and say, I should have done this, should have done that. But at the time, with a lot of things, the information given to you at the time, the information you're actually accessible to, looking and hearing, smelling.
And I'm older and wiser now, and I actually look back at it, and the events fell out the way they did. Yeah. Obviously, massively influenced by me. I was making decisions on the ground at the time, but were those decisions right or wrong? I don't know. I can't go back and talk to that guy that put that bomb in the road. That may have been, if, we moved down the hill pretty quickly. I made a bold move aggressively to get down the hill to try and protect our group as we were driving through a valley, basically. If I hadn't have moved down there as quick as I did, if I had have had the detection dog out on the road and the engineers clearing systematically yes, I may not have hit that IED like I did. The fact remains that there were 2 IEDs in front of us on the road that day. We a shout out to Raz, the detection dog. He found the second one, and Raz sat on the second IED. So that killed the dog, the detection dog we had. He's on the Canine Memorial at the War Memorial now, his name. But if we hadn't have aggressively moved that down that hill, I don't know. Was there 20 fighters in that valley setting up a complex ambush? Maybe our speed of manoeuvre, thwarted their efforts to ambush us that day. Maybe that didn't happen. Who knows? When you
it's an impossible scenario.
Yeah, it's when you can't second guess.
The variables
yourself
go from
what happened
anywhere that they were there with tea for you or a gun.
Yeah, it might have very well just been 2 IEDs in the road that day.
Yeah.
You'll never know.
Oh, the variables are insane.
Yeah.
And then returning to the unit after a big incident.
Yep.
And then you deployed after that again?
Yeah, another 3 times after that. So it was a big period. I came back to Australia. I had about 4 months sick leave where I hobbled around, sat on a couch and watched movies and waited to get sort of function back and
right in those
in my body. Drinking too many beers.
Yeah.
And then sort of after about a 4-month period, I was able to get back into training, doing PT, getting fit and healthy. And to be honest, that starting of recovery after an injury like that, it was a long time. I was noticing after deployments, 6 and 8 years later that I was still recovering on day one, literally like over the first 6 or 8 months. I can't remember exactly how long it was. It was probably 8 months from IED to redeployment back to Afghanistan, or somewhere like that, 6 to 8 months. The recovery curve was massive. Like I was waking up today feeling better than I did yesterday, having more movement, feeling stronger again. I was starting to run. My run times were coming down. I was just improving really rapidly. In later years, I kind of felt sometimes that I was still improving physically, but it was just so much more gradual because I was getting back to close to what I was pre-injury. Yeah.
And you were blown up again on a quad bike.
Oh, that was the same trip. That was before.
That was the same trip. Oh, before.
Yeah, we got mortared basically one day, and a couple of my mates were having a bit of drama on their bikes. Their bike one was stuck, and they were trying to get it out without losing it down the side of a mountain. And while I was waiting for those, the enemy bracketed me with their mortar. If anyone knows how mortars work, I was on line OT, and they sort of bracketed me. And when I realised what was going on, that there should be somewhere else I should exist. Yeah. At that moment, I started my bike up and went to ride off, and the round pretty much landed within a metre of me, I suppose. But I get a few bits of frag in me that my patrol medic dug out. There was no real injuries.
Because the engine bay took most of it.
I rode over the explosion on my bike, and a lot of the blast was taken up by the front of the quad bike. And I used to have a little, on that patrol, I had a little bedroll on the front of my bike, and there's a metal grill, and that just took most of the frag, really. Yeah. But I spoke to other guys too about, there was a lot of bang in that mortar round, but there wasn't a lot of frag, like good quality ammunition like we have in Australia. That's got a lot of metal fragments in it and things like that to do damage when it goes off. We put down some of that ammo that it was pretty cheaply made. So, dodgy factories somewhere in northern Pakistan or Afghanistan or something, and it's just a bit of bang, basically. Yeah. So it's got less frag in it. So
well, at least at that time you would have looked like a fucking movie star riding through.
I wasn't feeling like one.
Riding through an explosion.
Yeah, it was laughed about a few times over a beer after that.
Yeah, like, as long as you can laugh about it, mate, it's never too bad. And then moving sort of forward in your career, unless there's anything from
that was 2007. Like just highlighting, I suppose, the full range. By the time I'd gone back in 2012 or so, there was no vehicles anymore. Vehicle operations were pretty much too dangerous in the areas we wanted to go to, and we were doing a lot of high risk arrest and the kill and capture missions you hear about. So we needed to be fast and timely when we found a bad guy that we wanted to go and apprehend. We had to get to him quickly, so it became all helicopter operations, and we were pretty lucky on those last trips to have our own dedicated American air assets. So our own Black Hawks we could call on to fly out to get to the fight, I suppose.
And how often did you guys work with the Tier 1 assets from the Yanks, as far as your Deltas, Green Berets, guys like?
I've worked with heaps of SEALs and different guys over the years. They might have been on exchange or something like that. But the operations we were doing in Afghanistan, we had our unit made up of all the elements that we needed. We had the operators like me, the teams basically. We had our own medics, our own signalers, our own engineers all attached to us. We had our own Afghan partners. We had our own air crews, so we didn't have to operate with too many other units outside the guys that were in our immediate force element, I suppose. But individuals in Afghanistan over the years for different missions or something, they might get sent somewhere as a liaison officer or just to work with other units for different tasks that they might have been given or something like that.
Yeah. And then you moved into more of a almost an embedding role with the Afghan
so that
soldiers.
last trip that I was flying around on helicopters trying to catch the bad guys, I was a partnering force mentor. So there was me and three other guys, and we worked with about 30 or 40. I actually was probably a bit more, but like quite a few Afghan guys, a couple of platoons style thing, style groups, and we would train them on days we weren't doing operations, and then on operation days we'd go with those guys to get the job done.
Yeah, it was funny.
I enjoyed. That was one of the most enjoyable trips I had. There was still a lot of fighting going on. It was still pretty exciting, and you're running around the Badlands with dudes you can't even speak English to. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I remember you sort of telling me the legalities too, because they're local soldiers in local lands. That you'd get the mission with a kill capture mission or an operation, and then it had to be cleared through their lawyers and their sort of before deploying.
We had missions coming down to us through our coalition, headquarters type thing. Quite often, some of those missions we would talk to our Afghans partners about, but we were also they would come to us with missions because we had capabilities and assets that they didn't have, and they would be saying, "Hey, can we go and do this? This is something that's important to us." They had a lawyer sort of attached to them. There was a lot of policing style stuff in and around Uruzgan, so they would come to us and they'd go, "We've got this guy we want to arrest. Here's the arrest warrant for him. Can you help us do that?" And we'd be like, "Oh, yep, no worries. That's our job." So we'd go out with those guys with the arrest warrant to go and capture some militia commander or
Well, that was Afghanis part of. I'm not even sure if they were a unit at the time. Crew 222, because they.
I don't know.
Yeah, because they were the special forces. A&A when I was there. Were the crew guys. I know at the time when I was there, they were working actually primarily with British SBS.
Right.
And that was, I think that, as far as I was aware, that was the embedded position. Moving sort of post-career, but linking back to sort of pre, I remember you and me having a discussion about, and every time people who listen to this will be like, fucking Willy going on about the book Tribe.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've just thought it's been such an influential book for myself at least, and I think relates to a lot. You and me were talking about that you actually did a lot of study about things like your PTSD, sort of mental resilience and everything, almost expecting you will be faced at a point with it,
I
and you're almost tooled up before it.
sort of pre-Timor, when I got to the Special Forces, I suppose, when I started doing operations, we weren't really taught about battle stress or that too much. It was still, and it needs to be in a lot of regards, in my opinion. Toughen up and get on with the job. You need soldiers to be tough, and but we weren't educated much on the stresses of combat, and you need to be. So I sort of post getting blown up and different bits and pieces started doing my own research into post traumatic stress and battle stress, and I was when I transitioned out of the military. I started doing a few adventure bits and pieces, so I was working back with some veterans organisations, taking people that had post-traumatic stress disorder into the wilderness for a trek. So I wanted to understand a lot about it myself, and that's when I found that book and read it. And that's a phenomenal book, and I recommend it to anyone that's served overseas or in some sort of combat zone or something like that, and they want to understand what's transfer, evolution of their of themselves.
I'd even go a step further and say anyone who you will face trauma in your life of
absolutely.
Any aspect.
Yep. You're probably living a boring life if you don't.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I was actually talking to a mutual friend, Dan Pronk, about trauma and levels of trauma. That it is such an individual thing. Of him saying, if you or me really walked outside and there was a car crash with someone killed and a civilian just there on the road, that could be super traumatic to them, where he's like, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a 30-year doctor, and I've served in both 2 Commando and the SAS. That wouldn't faze me. I'd do what I need to do and then go home and sleep. I wouldn't think about it.
Yep.
And the more you're exposed to, the more you expose yourself to where you could potentially have trauma and challenge yourself, sort of build that muscle and your resilience in it. And they go over that a bit in the book.
Yeah, yep.
That, there are guys who just deal with it so much better. And I actually almost would say everyone should really read it to actually understand things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it puts a lot in perspective. We've talked before about full-time pensions after the army create a victim status.
Yeah, they're
getting on with it.
A lot of cases, they're detrimental.
Yeah.
People that have been injured and can't work at all should be looked after by defence. But I'm actually also a believer of people need to be given a new purpose. You can't just have no purpose in life and sit at home on your pension. That's not good for you. You need to find your new purpose in life and pursue it. Yeah.
And do you find that you're more of a purpose-driven guy than a goal-driven? That you'd rather live for something rather than live chasing something, if that makes sense? Like you'd rather live, the way I see it, you go out on your month-long treks, rather than, well, I'm going and doing this business because I want to buy a Ferrari.
Yeah, no, I've never really, like the Ferrari thing's not me. I've never really had these big long-term goals in life. They've always been these more short-term things that I wanted to achieve. And like for me, selection was an example of that. Discharging from the military, I went back and worked as a contractor, and like getting out of the military and then going back to a war zone to work as a security contractor. That was like just one of those little short-term goals. I would like to do this. I'd like to see what it's about and see if I'm any good at it. So they were just sort of the short-term goals. To then now in life, I'm just more about experience. Like I thrive on being in environments that are a little bit more challenging, whether it's just in a sort of an adventure travel scenario. You're going to a country you've never been to and you're trying to interpret what the locals mean by their, body language or their gestures or the way they talk or something like that. And you're just trying to interact and get on well with people in that sort of adventure travel sense. Or it might be climbing, a mountain or existing in the snow or something like that. Like I enjoy experience. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's a bloody important thing. A lot of experience that money can't really buy, I guess.
Oh, yep.
You have to immerse yourself into it.
Yep. And a lot of theory is important in a lot of instances. The more theory you have, the more successful you're going to be in any sort of operational scenario. Climbing a mountain, for example, if you don't know how to tie knots, if you don't know how your stove works and your pack works and how to get fresh water when you're out there, you need to have like those bits of theory. But the theory doesn't beat the practical and experience and, trial and error and all that sort of stuff. That's more important, in my opinion. Both are important, but the experience is actually more important.
Yeah, so can you explain it? Because I sort of know, but your job now, so to speak, what you actually do as far as I'd almost call it like tailored travelling.
Yeah. So I did, after my military service, I transitioned out of the army, out of the Defence Force was pretty easy for me. I just had a mate and said, well, I'm working in Afghanistan, come work with me. Cheers, I will. And so it was like, who you know. I went and worked with a friend, security contracting, and a lot of the skills that I had, I was putting into practice now. I enjoyed the civilian security contracting differently to the military because there was no big government defence giving me the rule book, telling me how to behave and stay out of trouble. It was just a client telling me what they wanted to achieve, and my job to go out there and help them achieve their goals, basically. Whilst I don't do so much, war zone stuff anymore, I still help people achieve their goal, whether their goal is to climb a mountain or their goal is to improve in life, to become a better person, or to get awesome experiences, to make their life more worth, living. That's what I do now. So I do a lot of that, taking people away on trips, giving them experiences. I do a lot of trekking in Tassie here because I enjoy it, and I love taking people with me to doing trips overseas. I enjoy motorbike riding, which is why we ended up meeting in the Simpson Desert. But I've done a few motorbike rides with mates to Mongolia and Vietnam and places like that, and trekking trips and looking after people.
Yeah, and I guess, it's a job.
Yeah,
but it's a pretty bloody enjoyable.
Yeah,
one.
And you still have to earn a living. I do a bit of training as well, so I don't necessarily just take people overseas all the time. Some people still want to go on their own, so I'll teach people how to look after themselves a fair bit. I do a bit of that. Sort of personal safety training, I call it. Just teaching people how to be aware of their environment, how to stay safe themselves when they're in places that are a bit foreign to them, or they could even be hostile, like war zones. So do that, but then just as well teaching people how to handle fear and a lot of those skills that I reckon are fundamental to having an interesting and great life type thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's something so different too. And I hear about some of your treks, and I'm like, you mean you're up that mountain for 2 fucking weeks? Shit.
Yeah.
It's something that it just doesn't really happen. Those sort of grand adventures.
There's got to be a little element of risk in it. You've got to be outside. I'm a firm believer of you've got to be outside your comfort zone. You've got to be pushing your own boundaries in order to evolve and develop. And your example a minute ago of someone who's never been exposed to any trauma to someone that has been exposed to trauma, and how they react when they see the same thing. The example of being outside your comfort zone, I was saying earlier again how my military career progressed from pretty simple, easy operations in some sense, not a lot of enemy sort of interference in what we were trying to achieve our mission. Timor example, we're out doing humanitarian aid patrols, helping the locals, come up with plans to build new infrastructure, or just running a medical clinic or something like that. When there's not a lot of enemy presence there, that mission, while the logistics of it might be difficult or something like that, not actually getting interfered with, to then go to Afghanistan and have them putting bombs in the road in front of you as you're trying to drive down it. Like, it gets more and more complicated, but I had a good progression. So I function pretty well now. No dramas. I can go back to a war zone, and I'm okay if I see people that have been blown up and things like that. Yeah,
exactly. Some people have just, fuck, what do you do?
Yeah.
And you, as part of your sort of training, talk about the experiences of, look, if you're going to, let's say someone wants to go trek through Brazil.
Yep.
This is one of the more dangerous countries in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of kidnapped for ransom in South America, and you, as well as crime. If you're seen as a tourist anywhere, you're a target for criminals to come and take your shit. So, looking after people, telling them how they can go and do those trips and stay safe and come back and tell the stories about it is important, as well as doing some amazing stuff, like going places you probably couldn't otherwise go and getting stories that you wouldn't otherwise get.
Yeah.
It's all about experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Living for the time you have, I guess. And,
getting the most out of your life, getting the most out of the time you've got available to you, mate. You know more about that than anyone. Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. No one tells stories about sitting in an office, but plenty of people tell them about bloody going out in the bush or going across the snow. And as far as, your life now, your training, how you see the world, how has that sort of evolved through those sort of post-traumatic growth? Such? I remember you...
I'm big. I love that term, and I heard... I think I'd heard it a few times before, but then again, I listened to that podcast that you did with Pronky, and he was talking about that post-traumatic growth. Another bloke I know is big on it. It's absolutely, like, I'm a better person for being blown up. Like, I have a better grasp and understanding on life, how fragile you are as a human, but still, I'm not going to wrap myself in cotton wool and sit at home. That's no way to live. I'm going to go out and get experience. So I absolutely 100% agree with the post-traumatic growth theory, and I think I'm an example of it.
Yeah, well, I'd say for sure. And sort of to relate almost to myself, like you said, you're a better person being black. I'm a better person for getting my diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I think those experiences are pretty fucking important in life.
Yep.
You actually, when we're on the ride, we're having a chat in the Simpson Desert. As you don't know, we spent 2 weeks pretty much riding motorbikes. Well, you rode bikes, I was in support vehicles across the Simpson Desert. And you actually were saying, we'll often say PTSD, but you're saying, well, at the time it was really, you dropped the D. It was post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
But it's not at least my definition, it's not a disorder until it disrupts your everyday life.
Yep.
That's a disorder. Same with alcohol.
Yeah, that's
I'm not an alcoholic. I drink, but I can go days and it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. So I'm not an alcoholic. And I think with PTSD, or your stress, it's a disorder when it starts changing your day-to-day, who you are.
Yep.
You can have post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely.
It's just stress.
And you can relive a moment. You can have dreams about an incident or something like that. I don't know. I suppose an example is, as long as that dream's not preventing you from getting sleep, like it's not that stressful that you can no longer sleep. Because if you can't get any sleep, obviously over time you're going to start to not function. You're not going to be able to go to work. You're not going to be able to look after your kids and your family, and so that's when it starts to become a disorder. But anyone that has been in a those first responders that are ambulance officers that have got to pull people out of burning cars and things like that you talk about, that's a pretty stressful environment. Like they're going to be hit with some stress from that, and it's going to affect them. Are they able to continue, like all these old school police officers that have been on the beat every day, like chasing a criminal down an alleyway who may or might not be armed with a knife is a stressful thing to do. And you talk to these police officers that have been doing that for 25 years. It hasn't, in a lot of cases, it hasn't become a disorder for them. They're still chasing criminals down laneways, There's plenty of examples in the movies, I suppose, where that police officer is a bit of an alcoholic at the same time. That's then might be a bit of a disorder, but there's lots of functioning people that suffer traumatic stress day to day.
Oh yeah, and I almost think and I've and this is sort of my own theory on it, at least with emergency service versus army, is army have those stresses for you for 6 month tours.
Yep.
So we're in the community doing what we do. You go on a tour, things happen, and you come back.
Yep.
Now, the way I see it with emergency services is it's one day to day.
Yep.
But it's in your own community.
Yep.
Too. So it could be a neighbour. It could be, if say I'm an Adelaide guy, the Adelaide cops are dealing with Adelaide trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, if you're in Afghanistan and see people doing terrible things, at least when you come home, you're 12,000 k's away.
Yep.
It's not your kids, your family involved in that same community.
Yep.
That's, I think, that I would struggle with
that's certainly
fireys and cops and everything.
For those guys, it's going to be harder. They could turn up to a motor vehicle accident, and it could be someone they play footy with on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be harder. I think that a benefit for those guys, though, is the fact that they're protecting the good people in their own community.
Yep.
Like, that's always going to sit better, I think, with someone emotionally than a soldier who's got to go overseas and fight for someone potentially that they don't know.
Yeah.
But in the theory world, according to me, I think one of the biggest differences, which, that cop does 25 years on the beat, but one of the biggest difference between that police officer and that soldier that only does a 6 or 12 month deployment, that police officer at no stage expects to die at work today. He expects that his workplace will look after him. If there's a guy in a house with a gun, they'll cordon the house. They'll do everything in their power to have absolutely no loss of life. Whereas the difference for a soldier is that soldier needs to be prepared that going to work every day today could get him killed. And he might literally need to die in order for the greater good. For example, you have a bunch of guys patrolling down a valley in Afghanistan, and an enemy machine gun arcs up on them. The platoon commander knows that he's got to silence that machine gun. Otherwise, potentially, it could wipe out the whole platoon. So he sends Johnny and his section over there he knows that he could be sending guys to get killed. And the soldiers all know that. So that becomes a real defining difference, I suppose, between those emergency services and those soldiers. They're waking up knowing that they could get killed. And there's even extreme examples of that, and not just for soldiers, where not only are you waking up expecting and prepared that your job today could get you killed, but then you have those guys that in certain situations know that they're going to die. And there's, you could probably think of different examples of that. The dude rolling on top of the hand grenade, like there's modern examples of Americans that got medals of honor, or even Australians, I suppose.
I guess the most publicised one of that, I guess, is Cameron Baird. As far as
and no one really knows the circumstances.
No,
I don't think even the guys were probably there. Why he did what he did. Total bravery, I suppose, going into that room to save his mates. And was there a conscious thought in his mind prior to him committing that action that this is going to get me killed, but it's for the greater good? Or I don't know.
Just
it's all speculation, but that's the examples.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a weird one with that stress. Difference between soldiers and emergency services, but I guess it all boils out to the same at the end of the day, that trauma is trauma.
Yep.
And I had, and people would be like, "Oh, shut up, Willy," but being pretty much diagnosed with PTSD from a psychologist once I was diagnosed, and I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, Willy, the way you look at it, he's like, what do you do if you're shot at overseas? Well, you go to ground and do this. Okay, what do you do if you're in a car crash? Well, I call 000 and do this. Like, so you've run over those scenarios in your head over your life. Well, of course, I've trained to do those things. Well, what do you do if you get taken into a doctor's office and get told you've got cancer that's going to kill you? Oh, and he's like, see, that is the most traumatic thing that can happen to some people because you've never run over that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
And that changed my perspective, because I'm like, oh, fuck. I always thought, your stresses were being a soldier, that's it's getting blown up and getting shot, where it can really come
Yep.
from anywhere. And it's important to fucking sort of hit on the head or be honest.
But
with
now,
yourself
post
at least.
that discussion with that guy too, though, you've come up with a plan.
Yeah.
So your actions on for getting dragged into the doctor's office and him telling you got cancer, now you know, is to go out and have some purpose and live your life. Funnily
you
enough,
have to grow from it.
yeah, funnily enough, yeah, that action on to do now was similar.
Yeah.
To I suppose to what you're doing before it.
Oh yeah, if I wasn't defence before that, I wouldn't have had the same sort of outcome or approach to it. Let's just fucking get on with it.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yep.
And what do the next sort of, almost jumping ship there for a bit, but what do the next sort of few years in your future look like? Like, as far as, I know you're a really purpose-driven guy.
Yep.
You live in the moment, but there's always goals and things to achieve and
Yep.
next adventures to have. And what are they looking like for you?
I've got more adventures coming up. I'm actually rafting the Franklin River here in Tassie.
Yep.
Later this year. I've never done it, and that's a little bit of a funsy for me. We're not going with any clients or anything, so that's going to be a good trip. Next year, I've got a couple of adventures in the pipeline getting planned. Taking people overseas, and as well as that, I'm looking at doing some more work with veterans. I'm hoping it comes off. So teaching other guys to do what I do as a guide, possible career change. The people, those ex-military guys that want to get out of defence and not sure what they want to do yet. Yeah, come and be an adventure guide.
Yeah, fucking
It's a good career. But doing some of that and just keep looking for the awesome experiences in life.
Yeah, fucking oath. And what about your sort of long term, like say 10 years? Where do you see, professionally and personally yourself being?
So it kind of goes, the question goes like right through my life. I've never had that 10-year goal.
Yeah.
I'll probably know what I want to do in 10 years, in 8 years.
Yeah.
When I've got all that new experience between now and then. So in the next couple of years, I'll keep working on my business. I'd like to grow it a tiny bit. It'll never be a big business because it'll lose what it is if it is. But I'd like to have the opportunity to have a few other guys like me around because, another couple of ex-military sort of veteran blokes to hang out with and work with. I'd like to have another small knit, high-performing team post-military, so that'd be good. But that's kind of the 2-year plan. Have a business that's going along all right, and I'm off doing adventures as well. Yeah, and evolving as a person, getting better at living.
We'll add a few more people in the barber then, mate. It won't be at a maximum of 3 people ever in here.
We might spread the exclusivity out to about 10 or 15.
Yeah, maybe we'll give up on the bloody Point Assist adventures and just have a brewery in here.
Weirder things have been done.
Weirder things have been done. And you got a name in here too. So Pronky has the Blue Voodoo Lounge. We've got to come up with something for in here.
Yeah, I think I've already got a name. That's probably top secret though.
That's top secret.
Share that.
Yeah, that's all right. It's classified info. I can tell you, but everyone you have to kill you.
All my workmates that I've ever worked with will know what it's called.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, look, unless there's anything else you want to go over, I think we've covered a fair bit. But is there anything that's burning?
Oh, mate, no. Is there anything else you want to
know? No.
It's been awesome having you coming down here to Tassie. Thanks for coming. Come back again, mate.
Mate.
And it's been a short trip, so next time you come back, it'll be good. We'll go for a hike, mate. We'll go climb a mountain over a weekend or something.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Get up there in the freezing cold snow and get you wet and hungry and just like old times.
I'm too
in
old
the military.
to be doing selection now, mate. Fucking hell. I'll be out there. It'd be like day 1, week 1, candidate. I'm like, fuck. Well, it's Willy a second ago. What the fuck's going on here? That's my one thing about coming for a hike with you. I'm like, fucking these operators over here. This might be a bit hard.
It's a kind of another funny story. So, getting out of the military and thinking to myself, I've got a bit more spare time on my hands now. What am I going to do? I might go do a bit of trekking. I did a little bit as a young fella, but not much. But the whole mindset how you change and a lot in the military. I literally went, I'm going to go hike. I'm going to hike up this mountain. I need to get to the summit of that hill. Parked my car, got out and ran up a mountain. Rightio, I'm at the top of the mountain, turned around, ran back to the car and drove home.
What now?
And I literally got home and I'm back a bit early. Like, maybe I could have taken my time a bit more. So I had to actively work on enjoying the moment, like not treating it like it was a mission so much, but more just enjoy the adventure up the mountain and back. So, we stop and have a lot of brews, mate, along the way.
I can get around that. I'm more than happy to bloody brew up.
Yeah, I'm slow now. And I actually see it, though. So I'll go for a hike with guys just getting out of the military, veterans and that, and I'll see them get out of the car and want to get to the summit, this mad mission, and turn on. And I literally have to like slow them down, walk it, mate. Hey, mate, let's have a sit in the forest and check the trees out and let's stop and have a nap. Like,
oh, fuck, mate. You have no problems with me doing that.
Except when there's blizzards in Tassie and you're getting snowed on and wet and freezing cold. There's not too much napping in pleasant trees in the middle of the day then.
It's good shit, though. It's weird like that. I remember you, one of the guys asked us when we were out the bike ride about sort of being, what's the word I'm looking for? But like how remote can you be?
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, it's very relative.
Yeah.
So you were saying, look, yes, we're in the middle of the Simpson Desert, but we're a couple of hours to Birdsfield and a pretty good track, a couple of hours to Marie or Mungarani or wherever. We're not actually that remote. And you're saying I could take you 60 Ks out here into Tassie.
The wilderness in Tassie.
The wilderness where you're walking out or you're getting lifted out by a chopper. There's no Land Cruiser going to come and give you some fuel.
There's spots out there. There's no roads. Vehicles aren't getting in there. And in a lot of cases, if the weather comes in, and you've even seen over the last 24 hours how the weather can be crazy in Tassie sometimes. 1 minute it's sunny and clear and the next minute it's snowing and cloud and blizzard. If you're hiking in the wilderness in Tassie and that cloud and wind and 100 kilometre-hour winds and snow and everything's hitting, the rescue helicopter's probably not going to get to you either. And I go through teaching people how to be safe, ticking off being in control as much as you can, being in control of your own environment, having a means to get rescued and things like that are all important. But Tassie's remote. You literally might only be, like you say, 60, 50, 40, even 15 kilometres from where your car's parked, but that could be a 12-hour hike over really rugged country. And if you're not fit enough to do it, or if you have a spill and break your leg or something, you are in the most remote place in the world. There's a lot of instances where someone's not going to come walking along in an hour and rescue you. And there's plenty of examples of really competent and skilled people getting into trouble and even perishing in the wilderness in Tassie. There's a few famous photographers, which is an interesting story.
Yeah, it's a bloody good. Have you been caught out a few times with not a lack of skill, but getting caught out with a client in a blizzard or something and being like, hey, look, this is sort of game on here. We're doing this.
I haven't really been caught out to the point where like it's been all of a sudden a life and death situation where you're starting to rely on good fortune to save your life. I've never been caught out like that, but I've had clients on several occasions and we were set out to climb a mountain and we didn't get to the top because of the weather. I've had instances by myself or with other really competent, sort of ex-military guys, and we've gone to climb a mountain in Tassie and it's just we mightn't have had enough cold gear, for example. We were literally didn't expect it to be as cold and wet and freezing and ice as it was. So we didn't have enough cold gear. We didn't have the best goggles, or we didn't have the right bit of kit that prevented us from, getting to the summit of that mountain, which we set out to do.
Yeah.
That's okay. You just, we'll sometimes go pretty hard and push it and try and get to the summit, but to the point where it's going to get us killed.
Yeah.
I'll turn around and head home and come back and do it next winter.
Yeah, I guess it is that experience though to learn when you are really pushing
Yeah.
that limit.
Yep. And I said to you in the desert as well, like the desert is exactly like a mountain, and that's exactly like the ocean for any mad fisherman out there. Also, those things don't care about you. That you can die on them, that won't faze them. They'll just keep existing. Mountains very much like that to me. Like it's the famous saying that, you're not there to conquer the mountain, you're there to conquer yourself. And that's really rings true, I reckon. Like you're learning about yourself.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah. No one conquers Everest. They conquer their own themselves to push it to get up.
Yep.
And even that, talking about, they don't care about, the mountain doesn't care about you. Think of the tens and tens to hundreds of bodies left on Everest. Mountain keeps living, it doesn't give a shit.
And the surviving in those difficult, harsh environments, the desert's a classic. Like the desert doesn't give a rat's ass how much water you brought with you to go out there and see it. When you run out and you get exhausted and you die, the desert will just keep existing. Or you can take plenty of water and have a great time and enough to drink.
And you and me saw that on lots of occasions.
There was a few riders on that trip where guys maybe put too much reliance on other people to look after them, I think, and they weren't fully prepared for what, the adventures that lay ahead. The deserts in Australia aren't nothing to be, trifled with, I suppose, if that's the right word.
There's not much out there.
They're unforgiving.
Very.
If you're not prepared, or, you get one more flat tyre than you were prepared to have, and then your vehicle breaks down and you're a long way from nowhere.
Well, even down to, you're running out of fuel and you're sitting out in the sun for hours and hours with limited water.
Yep.
That's a dangerous scenario. Like that can turn bad.
Oh, absolutely.
Really quick, especially imagine if you're riding by yourself, you fall off, break your leg, and the next tree is 200 metres away for some shade. If you don't have the water, you'll die of dehydration.
Or you've taken a wrong turn 20 kilometres back, and the people that you're hoping to look after you aren't even searching for you in that spot.
Yeah.
Because your navigation wasn't maybe as good as it could be or something like that. So, there's a lot of scenarios where trying to be in control of your environment, your situation as much as you can be.
Yeah. How does it look for you bringing someone from a civilian background? Because I guess military, say I came to you going, hey, look, I want to go trek across, let's just say Nepal.
Yep.
I guess I start at a different level almost. Willy's had some experience with this.
Yeah, yep.
But if you think like a clean slate, someone comes in like, look, I want to do this. Where's the starting point for that? As far as, do you start with this is how to get yourself out of shit, and then we'll put in the fun?
No, you've got to go back to, you've literally got to go back to the what do you think you know? And going to a foreign country, not only do you need to know skills like where am I going to get my water from and how do I purify it so I can drink it, but do you even know about the culture you're going to? So when the local gets annoyed with you, do you know what that's going to look like when that local's getting irate, which could potentially be like a pre-attack indicator or something like that? What do you actually know about what you're setting out to do? Do you know about their culture? Do you know about trekking? Do you know about mountain climbing? Do you know how, like right down to, how to set up your tent? Do you know how to cook food? Do you know how to navigate? Do you know about situational awareness? Do you know how to pay attention to your environment and things like that? So learning what people know can take a little while in itself, because the old saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That person doesn't know what to tell you they don't know about.
Yeah.
You've got to literally investigate. And it's the same old thing. I've done a little bit of fast driving, and when we do fast driving, we talk about commentary. So you give commentary on what you're doing at the time. Quite often when I'm with clients, I'll just be talking about stuff. And sometimes they might know all about it. You're better off saying something that someone knows about than not saying something that they haven't learnt yet. So give a bit of commentary on what's going on and how you're operating, and then people can pick up on, oh, tell me more about that. I don't know anything about that. Or and then you can just start to elaborate. People start to learn, interacting with people that know more than you. Like I do it all the time. I'm always searching for people that know more about stuff that I want to know about than I do. And just by hanging out with them and interacting with them, you learn more.
Yeah, it's always important to not think you're the fucking bee's knees and you know everything, because that's when you're going to get caught out on shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching, and I haven't had really any experience with your long range trekking stuff other than defence. I remember watching, I think it was actually an ad for North Face equipment.
Yep.
And this guy was trekking across the North Pole.
Yep.
Which is, and it was like 140, 150 days. Like it was huge.
Yep.
And him going on about, and I never really thought of it until this, he's like, look, if my zipper breaks on my jacket, I'll die.
Yep.
You know, it's minus 40 with the wind chill on it, and it, you know, feels like minus 80 or whatever. And then it was an ad, but it sort of rang true that, yeah, at the end of the day, if you're not prepared and this happens, a simple thing as his zipper doesn't go up on his jacket, he's dead.
Yep.
And then, you know, being prepared for
and that little bit of information, if he doesn't know, so when he sets out, he might say, I need all the best gear that I can get. But if he doesn't know before he leaves that if that zipper breaks, he's going to die, he doesn't realise, hasn't occurred to him that that's the severity of the situation, he's not prepared for when that zipper breaks.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the fix, he doesn't have the spare jacket or something like that. So
yeah, it's a weird one.
That's the knowledge,
Bad real quick with a lot of that stuff. I guess something I'll sort of go into now, and I want to know your thoughts on it a bit. There's, as young men, or younger men, not bloody, you know, you're getting on. But
in my prime, mate.
In your prime, yeah. Still out stomp all of us around the bloody parade ground. But as young men, I guess, in society, as society gets sort of easier living, their mental health is decreasing.
Yep.
And for someone who's been through so much, probably in a lot better spot than a lot. What do you see as the influences of why this is going sort of so wrong at almost a societal level? Is it that lack of exposure to harder things, or almost a social influence?
People, or my opinion, I suppose, people in general, whether it's, you know, boys or girls, will generally seek comfort, will generally seek the easier option.
Humans are lazy by
I suppose. Yep. So if the easy option is sitting at home eating Pringles on the couch watching movies, people will gravitate towards that. On the weekend, not many people go and climb mountains in shitty conditions just for the experience. So the more and more people just stay comfortable all the time, the less and less we evolve for the better.
Yeah.
As individuals. You're going to either stay stagnant or go backwards in your capabilities as a human. Whether that's your physical capabilities, or whether that's because you're sitting on the couch doing no exercise, or whether that's your mental capability because you're not stimulating your mind, trying to learn new things, or read books about other people's experiences. If you're not testing yourself, we've evolved to do all those things, to test ourselves, to get chased by dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers or whatever it was. You know, if we don't ever do anything like that, I don't know. Just to me, it stands to reason that you're not going to evolve for the better.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to go backwards as a person.
Yeah, it was a similar question that myself and one of my commanders were talking about the other day. And it sort of went back to that humans, but also evolved to be lazy.
Yep.
And being lazy for a human in a primitive form is a survival technique.
Yep.
Of sitting in a cave eating.
Yep.
Is a fucking survival thing.
Yep.
And I always say that humans are primitive. We, let's say humans as, standing up, walking around, let's say 100,000 years or.
And that was important in our evolution. I mean,
of course,
for us to seek comfort, which was the warmth of a fire in a cave with banana leaf full of bloody meat.
Yeah.
That was comfortable. And if we got ourselves into that situation, we were better off. We would live longer.
Yeah.
So we sort that out. There's not many scenarios in anywhere in the world where I've been where you're going to starve to death these days. It's just that, like, it's a pretty rare situation to find yourself in.
Yeah.
Of all the people on the planet, there's not many people. In our Western sort of civilization, or even the developed world, I suppose. So I've worked with young boys a few times, and I've seen in those guys that they don't realise that what adventure is. Like, they're bored by the thought of maybe going for a bushwalk on the weekend. In some instances, they'd more rather stay home and get the excitement of, you know, beating their mate in the computer game or something like that. But the actual excitement, a little bit of danger or sort of something like that is important under some controlled conditions. You probably should wear a motorbike helmet if you're going to go dirt bike riding. But
yeah, there's stupid and then there's calculated risk, I guess.
Yeah.
And calculated risk is important to take.
Yeah.
But at least that's what I see it, and I think the psychology would back that up.
Yep. And a good example of a lot of those extreme sports like parachuting and probably more so like base jumping, like there's a lot of risk in that activity, but they do as much as they can to physically survive it, but they're still going to get that huge buzz from it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fucking base jumping, fucking crazy. I remember because that's the reason I got into parachuting, because I wanted to base jump.
Yep.
And then the more parachuting I did, the more crazy it seemed. I'm like, nah, fuck that.
Yep.
It was my first malfunction I had, turned me away from base. I think almost for life. It was like, yep, this is still a goal. And then I had a low speed mal, like an entanglement, or a line twist, sorry. And I was like, that would have killed me if I jumped off a building.
Yep.
Because instantly you can't.
There is no reserve on those chutes. I don't think. I've never done base jumping. I haven't done much parachuting, but I've known a few guys that have, and there's no time for reserve.
Yeah. Well, oh God, this will test my memory, but as far as I can remember, reserve is anywhere over 2,000 feet, and as soon as you're under that,
well, we used to static line parachute in the army, and that was normally 1,000, 1,200 feet, and you had a reserve. I don't know. I'm not. Maybe they were giving us the reserve to make us feel warm and fuzzy, but we had drills for it. In theory, if your main didn't deploy properly, you could use your reserve.
I can't remember what it is. Yeah, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a low speed malfunction under 2,000 feet.
Yep.
But you've still got a canopy.
Yep.
Ride it in.
Yeah.
You might not steer, but give it a crack. But that's what happened to me. Is a hop and pop at say 3,000 feet, and it was because I was on a student canopy at the time. I jumped, opened way sub terminal. I probably what bloody threw me off a bit, I think, was the instructor was like, Willy, you make sure you're open like early, because you will hit the ground in under 20 seconds from this training jump.
Yep.
And I think that 20 seconds is a fucking long time. And I sort of jumped, opened sub-terminal, big student, 190 feet canopy, just fucking opened that, slow and all twisted up. I ended up kicking it out.
Yep.
I probably should have just reserved, but fuck it. And that was like, fuck base jumping. That shit's crazy. I was at 3,000 feet. You're at 400 off a building. Nah, mate, you can have that.
And those guys are a good example of doing everything they can meticulously to, I suppose, try and control their environment. They want to parachute to deploy properly, so they're flying away from the cliff as it happens and everything. Like motorbike riding's kind of the same. Guys will spend a long time on their motorbikes so they don't let them down, they don't fail at a critical moment, doing 130 Ks or 120, 40 Ks, racing through the desert over sand dunes, and just as you come round and there was a the track takes a sharp left or something, and you need to be in control.
Yeah.
You want everything functioning right.
And have the equipment if it doesn't go right.
And if it doesn't go right, you're still trying to control your environment to the point when my head smashes the ground, I'm going to wear a helmet because that'll soften the blow. Like you're trying to control your environment.
Yeah, fucking A. As much as you can control it.
As much as you can control it.
Yeah. Fucking oath. There's a really interesting doco on YouTube about cave divers.
Yep.
And them going over
it's a pretty dangerous
sport.
sport.
All them saying it is the most dangerous sport in the world as far as the risk with it. As far as if anything goes wrong, you're fucked.
Yep.
That there's no second chance that you're like there's no such thing as an injury doing it.
And you're not going to get any good luck. There's going to be it's not like, well, if I come on this motorbike, if I do come off this motorbike racing through the desert with a bit of luck, I mightn't die. I mightn't hurt myself severely. That cave diver's line that's bringing him oxygen packs it in.
Oh yeah.
And he starts running out of air, and he's not, and he's still too far from the end. There's no luck going to save him there.
Oh yeah, it's really interesting them listening to them talking about setting up the gear and the unknown. With it, like this is the best equipment. I know the equipment. But I can't say that this diaphragm in my regulator is not going to pack it in. And if my exhaust bubbles hit the roof and brings down all the silt, I'm lost and I'm probably going to die. 600 metres into a fucking 2-foot cave. And I'm watching, fucking hell. Like
they'll take all that into account though, and then they'll carry. They'll have a spare regulator. They'll have navigation means. They'll run lines behind them, I suppose, to find their way out and zero visibility and things like that. So.
There's all
they try and cancel out all the what ifs.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, hearing them talk about it, you're like, fucking hell, that's intense. Yeah, I'm either gonna die on this or survive and be perfect.
Yep.
No such thing as a bad dive. Fucking hell.
It's gonna be an adventure.
Oh yeah, but that said, you see some of the stuff, particularly those divers do. Less people have been here than have walked on the moon.
Yep.
And there's a few things like that that I think for human. Sort of for humans to do is bloody incredible. But landing on the moon's the same.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, the risks associated with it and what you can take out. So you can take it as far as you want, but there's still massive risk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, for us to evolve personally and as a society, someone needs to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking really good for us. Easy. What else? Do you have anything else you want to?
Oh.
What are we, an hour 40?
I'm good, mate.
One something? Feel like unless there's anything else you want to go over, I'm good.
Nah, it's a good chat.
Easy. Well, I hope we got there. I hope your better half's words of wisdom came through.
Yep.
So thanks again, Mark, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah.
No, thanks for having me down in bloody Hope.
We'll absolutely talk again.
Putting up with me for a couple of days. Maybe the next time we do it, I'll try and get a smaller kit and we'll go out for a hike and do it out somewhere like that. And
that's the way, mate. Do come. That's a really good idea. Have a chat on top of a mountain.
Yeah, that'd be something fucking bit out there. I'm sure we could sort that out.
Yeah,
easy.
As long as there's not a blizzard going through.
Oh yeah, you just hear.
We'll be nice and quiet and peaceful.
Yeah, no, that'd be all right. Yeah, it's either one or the other, isn't it? Yeah. Bloody Tassie weather might be nice in the morning, then bloody pissing around the arvo. So whatever episode this is, I should have looked it up, but fuck knows, it's 20 something. I think it's actually the 21st because I did season 1 of 20 episodes, and I think this will be the start of season 2.
Yeah, right.
We'll just call it that. No, because I had a bit of it while I was doing the charity. I had a time off the podcast.
Yep.
So now, bloody with you now, I probably have to get back into it more seriously. So thanks, Mark, for coming on and sharing. And I really hope everyone at home enjoyed these. So cheers. Thanks, man.
No
Appreciate
dramas.
it.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.